This is Chapter 1, Introduction to Modeling. It's a really small chapter. We'll look at a couple of different ways in which we can think of modeling. So we have mathematical modeling, where we take a real world problem and represent it through mathematical equations or quantitative representation of the real world problem. Now, you can build this mathematical model with the purpose of either doing what-if analysis. There may be several input variables that you may be able to change. For example, what price should you set for your product, or how many units of a product that you should produce, and how many units should be shipped from one plant to one destination, and how many dollars you should put aside for funding pension plan, and so on. So there are lots of different input variables that you may have to do some what-if analysis with. So if you change one variable by some amount, another variable by some other amount, what will happen to the outcomes that you're interested in? So your model outcomes is what you're trying to look at by varying the model input. So if a model is set up in a descriptive way, then you can do what-if analysis. Now, on the other hand, you can also set up the mathematical model to determine the best possible solution. And these kinds of models are called optimization models. So if you want to set production levels in such a way that the total production cost is minimized, or you want to determine product mix problem where you want to maximize profit. You want to determine the combination of products that you need to produce that will result in maximum profit. So you can set up mathematical models in that fashion, and those kinds of models are called optimization model. Now, whatever modeling that you do, there are certain steps that you have to go through. And the very first step, which is probably the most important step, is the problem definition. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What are the decision variables? And what is the objective? So you have to define the problem that you're solving, and in information technology lingo, this is called systems analysis. You sit with the users, you sit with the managers and interview them and find out what exactly they need, and make sure that their understanding of what they want and your understanding of what they want match, and so on. So that's your first step. Once that is done, the second step is data collection. So whatever data that has bearing to the model that you're building, so you have to collect data about that. So if it is pricing model, you need to look at product prices and product demand at different prices. And if it is production problem, then you have to collect data about production cost and how many labor hours are needed to produce, how many labor hours are available, and there's a whole bunch of input variables that you have to determine the values for. And then you set up the model itself, and the model can be an analytical model, in which case there are some mathematical equations, and you solve the mathematical equations and you get one final answer. Or it could be a simulation model, where you set up the model with some input variables and you replicate that model again and again and run it 1,000 times or 500 times and gather the output information from each of those repetitions, or this is called replications, and then you analyze the outcomes coming out of those 100, 500, 1,000 replications. So once you have that information, then you make sure that the data that you have, the output that you have generated for the input, they are consistent, and that's called model verification. Is the model producing the results is an accurate representation of the real world problem. So that's your model verification. And once that is done, then optimization and decision making. So you have the results, you have validated the results, and then it's time to make a decision as to, okay, this is what we're going to do. So we're going to produce these amounts for these products, or these are the amounts that we will produce in different months, or these are the product mix that we're going to produce. and these are the number of advertisement spots that we're going to run, or these are the amounts of investment that we're going to make in each of these possible investment vehicles. And then you communicate the decision in terms of writing a report about the model and present it to the management. The final decision is made, then you implement the model. So these are the steps that you have to go through in the modeling process. In the next chapter, chapter 2, we'll be discussing general models, spreadsheet models. And then chapter 3 onwards, we'll be discussing specific models, which are called linear programming models. And that will be chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6 as well, I believe. So there are different kinds of modeling. And then we will do non-linear modeling. And then we'll also do simulation modeling. So these are the different kinds of models that we will be discussing. And what we will try to do, there is no single functional area in business that we will be focusing on. So it could be problems from marketing, problems from human resource management, problems from production management, problems from finance. So we'll be looking at a wide variety of problems, and we will deal with each of those problems using the models that I just described: general spreadsheet model, linear programming model, non-linear programming models, and simulation models. These are the kinds of models that we'll be discussing for different kinds of business decision, functional area decision problems.